The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Hannah, and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's MBA Women International webinar. I apologize for the delay in starting. We ran into some small technical difficulties. Tonight's presentation is Kickin presentation, How to Engage, Influence, and Wow Your Audience, presented by Hough. Hough is the founder and CEO of ImprovEdge and the author of The Improvisation Edge, Secrets to Building Trust and Radical Collaboration at Work. Her book was a #1 bestseller on Amazon and also made the top 25 business books on 800 CEO Read. ImprovEdge received the Silver Stevie International Award for Most Innovative Company of the Year 2012 for Women in Business, and the Athena PowerLink Award for Outstanding Woman-Owned Business, and is a certified women's business enterprise. Karen's first life was as a professional improviser and actor. She trained with Chicago's Second City, did over 100 theatrical productions, was featured in radio, TV, and film. She lived a second life as a successful executive in IT for network engineering startups. She finally became an entrepreneur. ImprovEdge has a presence in 6 cities nationwide, with a client list including ESPN, JP Morgan, Ohio Health, Turner Broadcasting, Coach, and Nationwide Insurance. Karen is a graduate of Yale University and La Sorbonne Paris 4. She serves on several boards and is deeply committed to volunteer activities. Karen lives with her husband and 3 children in Ohio. So now I would like to turn it over to Karen.
Well, hey, good evening, Hannah. How are you?
How are you?
Good,
I'm
very
doing
well. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is going to be a little bit interactive. Hannah's going to help me throughout this time because, as some of you may or may not know, improvisation is the basis of everything we do. Obviously, I had part of my life as an improviser, part of my life as a business person, and mashing those two things up is one of the most exciting parts of my life now. And improv is all about collaboration, so Hannah's going to help me as we go through our webinar today. And so just to give you a sense of where we're going, first we're going to talk about improvisation, and we're going to go a little bit deep there because when presenting and when you really want to make an impact, some of the rules that come from the improv stage can serve you extremely well. We're also going to touch on some of the don'ts first, get those out of the way. We're going to hit on a lot of the do's, what you should do to be a great presenter. We're going to talk about the importance of the use of your body. We're going to talk about what happens when things go quote-unquote wrong, the oops. And then also I'm going to challenge you back at work to do the best that you can to continue to use these skills. Sound good, Hannah?
Sounds great.
All right, so let's get with it, shall we? Okay, well, first of all, we all improvise. We do every day, and I think a lot of people think that they couldn't be improvisers, which couldn't be further. And I'd like to know just about how long that beautiful plan stays in place, or you're going anywhere, right? Things always happen. Things change, and we improvise to make it work. And that really is the core of how to be great in front of an audience. It's to be flexible. It's to know that things could happen and things could change, and to be okay with that. As a matter of fact, to even be excited about it sometimes. One of the best presentations I gave was just this last summer. I spoke for a large women's conference in Dallas, and everything looked great before I got up on stage, and then all of the technology crashed. Now, I have to say I felt lucky because my mic was still working. In a very large room, the worst thing that can happen is if you lose audio. It was the only thing I had left. And so I did the whole thing without all of my technology, and what I was able to do is, in front of those people, demonstrate what oops to eureka or managing in the moment meant. So, you know, it's okay when things happen because you can handle it. Believe that you can handle it. So the next thing about improv we're going to talk about are the 4 principles. Now, I'm very lucky. At ImprovEdge, we started over 14 years ago looking at the concepts of improvisation. What are the behaviors that occur on stage that are really meaningful to high-performing corporate leaders and teams and individuals? And luckily, Wharton Business School thought our idea was kind of cool. And so they allowed us to do research with them because I didn't want to just sort of have a company that used a bunch of theater techniques and hoped that you could figure it out. I really wanted to know that this was connected to real learning and real meaning. And so we worked with neuroscientists and psychologists and organizational development professionals, and we found a great deal of research to back up the fact that what happens on an improv stage really can be incredibly effective in high-performing corporate leaders, teams, and individuals. So those 4 concepts we're going to talk about here are yes space, building blocks, team equity, and oops to eureka. All right? So let's take a look at the very first concept. Now, Hannah, I know you've helped me before. Let's do it again. Now, I know that all of you have the ability to chat. So could some of you type in any kind of object that a person could hold in their hand, any simple object? Hannah, can you see what folks might be contributing?
Sure. I'm just waiting for a few to come in right now. All right. We have one response that says a ball.
A ball. Okay, great.
Another. Yeah.
Let's take it. We'll take the first one. Or you can choose. Which one do you want, Hannah?
We have some great responses. Let's go with a flashlight.
Oh, flashlight. Okay, beautiful. So we are going to demonstrate, you and I are going to demonstrate yes space, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to say, here, Karen, here's a flashlight. All right, are you ready? And we're going to improvise a little scene together. And I promise you all we haven't practiced this, okay?
All right. Here, Karen, here's a flashlight.
That's not a flashlight.
What is it?
It's not a flashlight.
It looks like a flashlight.
It's not.
Are you sure?
Sure.
What does a flashlight look like to you?
It doesn't look like that. Okay, we'll cut. Now, Hannah, you've played this game with me before, but we've never done it with a flashlight. So tell me how it felt to sort of be stuck trying to make that scene happen with me.
It's a little bit frustrating, the work to see what you think the object is and not really getting much feedback. So I'd say mostly just frustrating, a little bit confusing.
Okay, that's great. Frustrated, confused, not getting the feedback that you need, absolutely. And I think sometimes in difficult conversations or conversations at work, we can feel that way. Now, what I want to do first of all is apologize. I was a terrible improv partner just now. I did not use the concept of yes space. So now I want to do it, and I promise that I put you through that for a reason. So do you mind trying the scene one more time?
Sure.
Okay, so let's try it again.
Great. Here, Karen, here's a flashlight.
Oh my gosh, I needed a flashlight. Did you know the lights are out at my house?
I didn't. This works perfectly then.
Oh, Hannah, you brought me exactly what I needed. And you know what? It's a high-powered flashlight with the big silver handle. I mean, this is going to be very, very helpful.
Oh, I'm so glad it will come in handy.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? It is such a good flashlight that I think I might tape it to my head as I walk home because I think the lights are all out on the block and it's very dark. Do you think that's a good idea?
I think that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, you know, do you have another flashlight?
I do not, but I think I'm going to have to go out and buy one.
Yeah, you know what? I'll go with you so that you can buy one as well. As a matter of fact, here, I'll give you some money so that we can both have a flashlight. Let's both tape them to the top of our heads, and we'll walk around and we'll be like the beacons of light.
Oh, that sounds great. What a great idea. I'm excited.
All right, cut. Okay, so how did you experience being in the scene with me that time?
Much better experience. There was excitement and energy, and it was very positive as opposed to the last interaction.
Right, and where did we go? What happened in the scene?
Well, we went from me just giving you a flashlight to being able to use the flashlight to making plans to get together again and moving together rather than separate.
Do you think we could have kept going?
I think we could have easily.
Yeah, yeah. So what we just demonstrated was the concept of yes space and actually also building blocks. So let me describe to you what actually happens on an improv stage. For those of you who don't know, improvisation is actually the art of quite a few actors arriving on stage. We have no script. We have no costume, no props. We have no stage makeup. We have no plan. What we do have is about 2 hours to fill and about 200 people in the audience. And it's awesome. It's some of the best performance I ever did in my whole performance career. I loved it. And the reason that improv works, and a lot of people, it's funny, I've run into quite a few people in my time who didn't think improv was real, because when it's going very well, it looks so smooth and it's so funny that you think, oh my gosh, it's got to be scripted. How do they do that? Well, it's very simple. The very first rule of improv is called yes and. So when you start with yes and, it means that no matter what Hannah contributes to the scene, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to give her some space that says, whatever you have to give me right now is valid. Now, it's not Pollyanna yes. It's not that, oh, no matter what, we'll always stick with your idea. I'll always say yes. I'll always honor it. If the scene isn't funny down the road, we'll both want to change it. But it really is a sense of whatever comes out, you've got to acknowledge and honor and say yes to. And the next step is that you can't just stand around saying yes to everybody else and letting them do all the work. You've got to say and that's the building blocks piece of this. So, Hannah said, here, Karen, here's a flashlight. And I said, yes. In other words, saying yes, it's a flashlight. Yes, your idea is good. And I said, and the lights are out. It's exactly what I needed. See, so I brought something to the scene as well. We both had contributed something, and we could move forward. So that's really the magic of improv, that we always say yes and. And the way we talk about it at ImprovEdge is yes space and building blocks. Sound fair, Hannah?
Sounds very fair.
Okay, good. So let's move on to team equity. Team equity is a great concept. It has to do with using the best parts of everything that's there and having a team that really complements each other. So, in a good improv show, you want to have a funny guy. You want to have a woman who knows everything about current events. You want to have somebody who can sing. You want to have somebody who can dance. And you want to have somebody who is really good with the one-liners. Now, that is an awesome team because there's lots of different styles being represented, and it will be a very rich, interesting show. So likewise, in business, you want to have a team that can really support you, that if you're not good at the one-liners, you need your one-liner person there with you. You need to have the person that can sing if you can't, for example. And it's incredibly powerful when we think about teams. Now, in the sense of presenting on stage, it actually allows you to think about everybody around you as part of your team. You don't have to feel alone on stage. You can really say that somebody else can support you, and we'll get to that too. All right, so oops, eureka. This is my favorite concept, and there's a whole bunch of examples from history and science and business about where something unexpected happened, or maybe even something that was considered a mistake happened. I think anyone who's been to business school remembers the example of 3M. They made this kind of glue that did not really adhere. It peeled on and peeled off, and people really didn't think it was useful until a few years later, a colleague of the person who had made it used it to mark pages in his hymnal. And what he loved about it was that he could mark a page, peel it off, and it had not in any way hurt the page or the print or anything. Well, that was Post-its. They began as a terrible mistake. And the thing about improv and oops to eureka is that mistakes happen all the time. Our entire performance is the unexpected. We have no idea what's going to happen in the next second until it happens. And so we realize that, sometimes things really do kind of crash on stage. I mean, I've had people say, well, you're improvising. You can hide it, right? Well, no, you actually can't. Everybody knows something crazy went awry. And the key is to not try to hide it or act like it didn't happen. The key is to make it into something fabulous. And that's a concept that we're going to talk about when presenting on stage. All right, so those are the 4 principles. So I hope that you kind of see how they wrap in. And we're going to move on to the next concept. All right, we're going to start with the don'ts, everybody. Let's just get them out of the way. Don't clutter your slides. Please, please, please. Now, I get a lot of kickback about this because people will say, well, I'm required to show all of the data on my slide. PowerPoint, actually, there's a rule. It's called 10/24. And what it means is that you should never have more than 10 words per slide and no smaller than 24-point type. But the key is here that you've got to start what you're presenting on your slide. It is actually detracting from the ability for you to be clear. So if you have a whole lot of data that people need to see, it's called the notes section. It's something that is below the PowerPoint. People get it afterwards, or they can have it in a handout. But the point of a presentation is for a person to create a powerful, authentic message. It's for you to be you. It's for you to stand up and be the expert. If you're turning around and you're looking at all this data and people are desperately trying to read through tons and tons of data, they're not paying attention to you. And the point is for them to be looking at you. I'm sure we've all looked at really cluttered slides that are hard to read, and it's very frustrating. So let me give you an example. Okay, this doesn't even come close to some of the really bad slides I've seen, ones that have tons of numbers and 27 graphs and lots of things on the side. And what I want to tell you is that in this slide are all the major concepts of an experience I had at my publisher's book marketing workshop a few years ago. So my publisher is wonderful, Barrett Kohler. They had us go to a book marketing workshop, and a really great guru in book marketing presented. And he talked about the concept of sawdust. But his slide did not look like this. It looked like this. It was a picture of sawdust, okay? But let me flip back. Every single bit of data on this slide was on this slide. He basically told us all of that information. He talked about how the concept of sawdust relates. And I'll tell you, to this day, 2 years later, I remember all that information. You could probably ask me almost anything from the slide before and I could tell you. Because it was so powerful to see a picture of sawdust, to have this really smart person talk about the concept and allow us to think about it, and it stuck in a way that a great big cluttered slide never would have. Okay? So that is my #1 entreaty to all of you is please, please get out of those awful slides. All right. You know, a lot of the don'ts, unfortunately, rest in PowerPoint because it is one of the things that I actually dislike the most about presenting. I think that people lean on it. I think they don't use it properly. And a really annoying habit, I'm sure that you've run into it, is people who read their slides. So I want you to assume, unless you're presenting to kindergartners, that everybody has made it to at least 3rd grade in your audience. They're not here to have you read to them. Okay? They're here to read a bullet point and 1 word, and then for you to give all the detail. Don't patronize your audience and read the slides. Okay? It just amazes me that this memo hasn't gotten out when I'm sitting at maybe at a major conference and somebody starts reading their slides. So give us all a break. Believe that we know what's going on and can read it, and give us something else. Don't put your presentation on the slides to read. Be something new and different that people want to watch. Okay? Next. This is what I've been driving at the whole time. So think about it this way. If you have slides, if you're presenting on stage, you know, think about a performance. And performances often have something in the background that sort of sets the scene, all right, like a backdrop. So in many operas that I've seen, they have a beautiful sort of backdrop that looks like an Italian town. And it gives you a sense of what you should be thinking about. But the important part is that singer in the front who's passionate, who's telling a story, who's giving you information that you want to hear. And that's exactly how you should work. So often I see nervous presenters who basically face their slides for the whole presentation. Or it's so important they back up and they constantly refer to their slides rather than moving forward and being the presentation. So don't let that little bit of technology be more important than you. Excuse me. You're the reason that people are there to see this presentation. You have the passion, you have the ability, you have the information. And that's a very, very important part of being a great presenter. Okay. I hope everybody giggled a little bit. This is one of my favorite moments. It's incredibly important to learn to relax a little bit. We're going to talk a bit about how to do that. I have seen people pass out on stage. I know it looks like a funny joke, but I have seen it happen more than once. And by the way, it was both genders, different builds. It had nothing to do with who they were. They just got out there, locked their knees, and stopped breathing. And the reason that that can happen is because as you get nervous, unfortunately, one of the common physical side effects is that you start to breathe in a shallow way. So I think you can probably hear this. I'm going to go. So you can probably picture that my breathing is all from about my neck up. It's fast. And by the way, it's actually not getting enough oxygen into my body. And that's really going to start to short-circuit you. When you lock your knees, some people say, well, my knees weren't locked. But if you're standing straight and you're not moving around or moving your legs, you do run the risk of having your circulation stop down at the knee area. So please be aware, please be careful, and don't get hurt on stage, okay? So we've gotten through the worst of the don'ts. I hate that part. It's very important that you can do is breathe. I know it sounds a little woo-woo, it sounds a little theater, but the truth of the matter is oxygen and breath is one of the most important things that you need to understand how to use in most situations in life. For example, even if you're sitting down having an interesting conversation, your ability to breathe is going to change how your voice is perceived by the other person. Now, on stage, breathing is incredibly important. It gives you the energy to present. It gives you an ability to change your voice. So you can probably tell I've just dropped my voice. If I wanted to make an important point, if I wanted people to take me seriously, I would breathe, slow down, and drop my voice. Now, if I'm wanting to humor people and I'm telling them a silly story, I'm going to breathe, I'm going to raise my voice, and I'm going to laugh. See? So you have a lot of power in that voice. I worked with lots of executives. One was great. She decided to use some of her yoga breathing. There are many different techniques that you can find. Dr. Andrew Weil has quite a few. They're normally numbered. And there are even times when I use breathing techniques in the car on my way to a meeting if I'm excited or nervous. It helps take care of your nervous system. So just understand, you need to have a breathing technique. Whatever works for you, I don't care what it is. It can be yoga breathing. It can be Andrew Weil. It can just be, and then really go into your diaphragm. If you do that 2 or 3 times before you walk out, you'll have much more control over things like shaking voice or shaking hands. A lot of people ask me, how do I control the shake in my voice? Or how do I control the fact that I'm nervous? Breathing is the answer. All right, so let's move on to the next really important do. Okay, this is a big one. Now, I believe in letting presentations flow a little bit in the middle. I think you should be able to be free with things that can happen, talk to the audience if you want to. But the 2 things you absolutely want to script and practice, then throw away the script and try again, are your openings and your closings. And I like to think of them as bookends, right? They're the beginning and the end of your presentation. And you always want to give people a reason to sit up and say, wow, I want to watch this. And also, you want to leave them with a really great impression. So let's first talk about the opening. There are a million different ways to grab someone's attention. A lot of people call a good opening a hook. You may have heard that term before. So think about something that can really grab people's interest. Can you say a statistic, a startling statistic? Can you walk out and ask them a question and engage them immediately? I'll tell you, this is the antithesis of what an opening should be. Hey, everybody. Hi, I'm Karen Hough. It's great to be here in Las Vegas. I think we're going to have a great time. I'm going to talk about presentations. How you doing today? Yuck. Boring, 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 right? What if I walked out on stage and I paused and I looked at the audience and I said, did you know I've seen a person pass out on stage before because they didn't breathe enough? It might get a laugh. It will definitely grab their attention, and it'll allow me to move into talking about what's important in presentations. I mean, that was just literally off the top of my head, but you can come up with a million different ways to grab your audience in an interesting way. You might walk out and say something to the effect of, hey, I'm Karen Hough. Raise your hand if you hate giving presentations, right? And immediately you've got people engaged, you've got them laughing, you know, you've got something that's going to make your opening and your presentation feel different to them, okay? Practice with friends. Try different kinds of openings. That's a great way to get started. So your close. This is also very important. You know you're going to want to summarize at the end of your presentation, but again, you want to leave them with a button, a period on the end of the sentence that is your presentation. You want to give them something to really think about. And this has a lot to do with you know, thinking on your feet and making it really a great experience for them. So, for example, you want to practice the way that you're going to end. So I might say, and remember, you can be a great presenter today. Thank you, and then walk off, right? Another thing about closings that's quite important is please never end on questions. So I know that's going to raise a flurry of people going, what do you mean? People always end on questions. Okay, so think about this. You've done a great presentation, and then there's a 15-minute question and answer period. It goes great. You answer lots of questions. And then the moderator says, there's no more time, and you go, any more questions? No, no. Thank you. Goodbye. It's very weak. It's very weak. So you always want to have that one last thing to leave people with. Think about it this way. You finished your presentation. There's a 15-minute question and answer period. They finished, it's the end, and you go, no more questions? No more questions? All right. Remember, practice on your feet and out loud, and you'll be a better presenter tomorrow. Thank you. And you walk out. That's a much different way to finish. All right? So think about those bookends. Really spend some time. And I have just gone hurtling through a bunch of material. And Hannah, I'm going to turn to you for a minute. We've hit a bunch of don'ts, a bunch of do's. We've got more coming. What are you thinking? How are you hanging in there?
Good. I think it's a lot of common mistakes that I can keep in mind.
Yeah, it's a lot of things that are out there. Sometimes some of the rules I ask people to break are actually in Presentation 101 manuals, like the only way you should do it is this way, and I think that we need to be more flexible about how we do this work. Any questions you've got so far, Hannah?
Nope, none so far.
All righty, let's keep on. Okay.
Perfect.
This is one of my favorite do's, a presentation process. A lot of people have never thought about this. So a presentation process is a process that you have. It's yours. You put it together. You use it. And it's your way of feeling comfortable that you've done everything you can to be ready. And the nice thing about a presentation process is that it should work whether you have 6 weeks or 60 seconds. Okay? So if you have 6 weeks, your presentation process will involve, you know, thinking of a beginning and an ending, researching your topic. It will also involve having a few startling statistics. It will involve how am I going to breathe before I walk out. It's going to involve how am I going to grab their attention. It's going to involve making your PowerPoint, for example. So it's going to be a longer process, but all the steps will be the same. Now, when you hit a moment where you've got 60 seconds to prepare, and let me give you an example. You're at your favorite fundraiser, you have volunteered on the board for the longest time, and somebody says, hey, Karen, listen, you've just got to get up and say something to all these people before we end the night. Well, we're going to call you up in just a minute, okay? Get ready. Well, you're about to have an important moment where you've got to make an impression. You've got about 60 seconds. So you obviously don't have time to make a PowerPoint, so don't worry about that. You can't do any research, don't worry about that. But you can breathe. You can think about your opening line, and you can think about what you want to do in those 60 seconds. What's the point of me being there? All right? So let me give you an example. This is my little process. Now, this is obviously really the boiled down version, but these points are also in my expanded version. So for me, the make a choice is the first thing I have to do is that I have to decide what I want to have come out of me being up on stage. Okay? So I'll use the same example. I just really am very in love with a few not-for-profits. And so, for example, my choice might be, they said, Karen, you got to get up and say something. We'll call you in just a minute. I've only got about 60 seconds. The choice is, I want everybody in this room to write a check for this favorite charity tonight. That's the choice in my head. I want them to do that. It's important. It's meaningful. It'll make a difference for me. It gives a reason for me to stand up there, right? So then the next thing I've got to do is I've got to practice my first line. You see, I may not have a chance to practice my closing line, so I want to be sure I have my first line nailed. Because if you say it out loud the first time on stage, you're probably going to stumble and stutter. So even if it's under my breath and I'm standing in a corner, I say the first line out loud, even if I have to whisper. So I might say, who'd have thought an organization that had only 20 people in it could have raised $5 million in 5 years, right? Maybe I'll say that. Or, no, that's not good enough, that's not good enough. I'll say, ooh, without your support, these children cannot receive the treatments they deserve. That's it. That's what I'll do. Without your support, these children cannot receive the treatment they deserve. And say, I've practiced my first line. Now, my next piece is breathe. I have to breathe. I have to remember to do that. So I breathe really deep into my diaphragm, and I hold it for a second, and I let it out. Now, the last point in my process is go. You can have little triggers for yourself that are very personal. This is a very personal trigger for me. Go throughout my acting career, depending on the character, of course, always had to do with how I was going to enter. So if the character was sad, I would enter sad. But here, for presentations, go always means that I will lift my chin, I'll straighten my shoulders, and I'll smile. So when I say go in my head, because what's happened is the person up on stage has gone, Karen, it's your turn. And now we're going to have Karen, come on up. I say go in my head. I lift my chin, I square my shoulders, I smile. I walk out and I say, without your contribution tonight, these children cannot receive the treatment they deserve. I hope that you all contribute to this incredible charity. Thank you so much for being here tonight, and we couldn't do it without all of you. So let's write those checks. Have a great evening. And I'm done. So it's about sort of having a thing that you can always fall back on no matter what comes up. Okay. All right. So you heard me allude to this earlier. Do practice out loud and on your feet. I can't tell you how many people I know have said, oh, yeah, I ran through it as I was driving in the car. Well, that's not going to do anything for you. You're going to have the words, which is good. But the key to being a really great presenter, whether it's just a weekly update or it's for the conference of your life in front of 300 people, is that you've got to stand up and you've got to say the whole thing out loud. So your living room might become your best friend. And really, the best way to do this is in front of other people. So get your roommate, get your spouse, get a good friend to stand there and watch you do it, because you're going to be very nervous in front of a friend. You'll have to stumble around, but it's going to make you much better when the time comes to be in front of the critical folks. Now, I also want to add, the best way to practice is in an empty room or in front of a person, or, you know, in your bedroom, wherever you can find a little privacy if you need it, or a person who's willing. But please do not practice in front of a mirror. That is actually not great advice. Now, you can do it once if you really need to see how you look and you want to make sure you're doing the right thing. But if you only practice in front of a mirror, it's a little known fact that you will actually get more nervous in front of a crowd, and you won't understand how your energy is going out. So basically, a mirror just feeds back you, and it's only a few inches away. You've got to start to feel and be on your feet and understand how it feels to be, you know, in a place where you can move around and not be held by the mirror. So please try to understand how to practice without a mirror. That's very key. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about impact, which is really, really critical when you're presenting. And the thing I want you to understand is that Dr. Mehrabian did this incredible research, and he found out that really 55% of the reason people decide if they like you or want to listen to you has to do with your body language. 38% of their decision, and by the way, this is in seconds of meeting you, is based on your tone of voice, which is something that call center professionals know very, very well. Only 7% has anything to do with the words you say. So really, what you're saying with your body and your tone of voice is really more important than your words in some instances, in many instances. So people who lean so much and spend so much time agonizing about the words they're going to say, it's not as important as being sure that you're comfortable standing up there and you can move around, okay? And I love this study. It's so impactful. It says so much about communication. And they redo the study about every few years or every decade, and it always comes out the same. So even with generational differences, we still really rely on the body to tell us what we need to know about a person. I love this quote. So I think that we are now moving into one of my other favorite sections. It's about what do you do when things change, when, like I said, your technology goes out or somebody asks a question you didn't expect or who knows what on stage. Well, number one, you should just understand that it's going to happen. So don't be afraid of it. It's going to happen. The best thing about oops, to make them a eureka, is to acknowledge what happened, to deal with it, and then to move on. Let me give you a couple of examples to show you sort of the worst way and the right way to deal with these. So I went to a presentation at a women's association for business owners, and there was a very nice attorney, a young attorney, who came to give a presentation on intellectual property. Well, he obviously had spent a lot of time agonizing and putting together his PowerPoint for this very important presentation. And what he didn't know is that we didn't have a screen or a PowerPoint projector. We expected him to stand up at the front of the room and talk to us. And so I counted. He referred, in a 30-minute speech, he referred back to the slides that were not there 16 times. 16 times he said, oh, I had a great slide for this, but it's not here. But what it said was, so he could never let the fact go that something unexpected had occurred, and it really threw him, and it just got tiring. Now, the flip side of this is a great story that came from my state. So I live in Ohio now. My husband's family is all here, and the governor and the president of Ohio State University, which is in the town I live in, and also a Heisman Trophy winner were all at a presentation. Now, the presentation was for the Heisman Trophy winner, and they were putting up, they were giving him some recognition. He'd been an incredible part of the community. And so the unfortunate part was it was a huge room of people. All these important people were there. And there was unexpected construction or something going on in the next room. So if you can imagine, Hannah, can you hear that? Can you hear that pounding?
Yes.
Can you hear? Okay, so imagine that the Heisman Trophy winner is standing up, and he's thanking everybody, and there's this pounding going on in the next room, and he's thanking everyone, and what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about what he's saying? What are you thinking about?
I'm mostly thinking about the noise.
Yeah, you're thinking about what the heck is that? Okay, but wait, it gets worse. So he sits down, then the president of the university stands up, Gordon Gee, and he starts talking, about how great he is and what a wonderful community member he is, and it's still the pounding's still going on. And are you hearing what the president's saying? No, of course you're not. Well, thank goodness. The governor stands up, and the governor says, Archie, I knew you were important, but are you really building a shrine to yourself next door? The place cracks up. They were so relieved that somebody finally acknowledged there's this ridiculous pounding going on next door, okay? And he said, well, folks, I guess he just can't stop construction for anybody, so we're going to ignore that a little bit, but I've got a few things I want to say to you. He dealt with it, and then he moved on. And it was just great. He didn't ever refer back to it again, but suddenly we could all focus, and we could hear what he was saying because somebody had dealt with it. So, for example, if your technology goes off, you need to look up and say, wow, it looks like the slides are down. Well, hey, I'm going to see if our technology folks can fix it. You guys know what it is? You don't? Okay, let me see if I can fix it from up here. You keep the audience apprised of what you're doing. Wow, it doesn't look like it's going to come on. You know, folks, I always say you never need a PowerPoint. I'm going to talk about 3 points today. Do you mind if we just go ahead without it? And the audience might say, sure, go ahead. And then you move on. You move on. You also have the right to take time to fix something if you think you can fix it. So you also have the right to say, wow, all the mics have gone out. You know, I think we can fix this. I want you all to stay comfortable right there. I'm going to step backstage and talk to our technology folks because I want to make sure we have mics. I'll be right back. Then you can walk off and try to fix the issue. The key is to acknowledge, deal with it, move on. All right. It's been a lot. I have tried to cram as many good tips as I possibly can into this small amount of time. And I want you to sort of commit to just a couple of actions because, again, improv is about doing. It's about taking action. It's about saying, yes, I can do this, and I'm going to try it, and I'm going to get help from my team, and I'm going to handle any unexpected things that come along. So you can choose one of these things. You can choose all these things. You can choose something different if there's something that you heard tonight that you think could really assist you. I would love it if you take some time to define what your preparation processes are. I'd also love it if you always decide to reserve practice time on your calendar. That's really critical because people will say, oh, I ran out of time. But if you block your practice time on your calendar, then you will stand up and you'll do it, and you'll be so pleased with the results. And finally, please just do it. Take those actions. I mean, make it happen. I like to bring this up. This does not mean that you have to present for 10,000 hours to be great, not at all. But it's a really incredible point about just how much true on-your-feet practice it takes to be great. I mean, truly, truly great at anything. For example, the 10,000 hours of practice relates to concert piano sort of status. And so if you think about the fact that you want to be a better presenter, the key is to present. You can't be better thinking about it or watching other people or reading books on it. All those things do help. They do help a lot. But what I want you to do is go out there and do it. Find a Girl Scout troop that wants to learn about your favorite hobby. Go to an association. Talk to MBA Women International and say, you know, I have a good idea for a breakout at the next conference. Talk to your regional MBA Women International and say, hey, I want to be a luncheon speaker. Do everything you can to find any place that you can present because then you get to try stuff. You can make mistakes, you can try a different opening, and you'll get better and better as you go along. Oh, it was so kind of Hannah to bring this up. We were really lucky. My book went to #1 when it launched in 2011, and it's still doing great. So if you have a chance to pick that up, it's available on Amazon. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know. Let me know what you think. And here, again, I just love this quote because it's so clear about how we get better. We get better if we do. If we do. So please stay in touch. I'd love to talk to you. If you have any comments or suggestions or questions, link with me. LinkedIn is one of the easiest places to find me. And I'd love to hear from you, and I hope you enjoyed it. So Hannah, that's it for me.
Great. Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
It looks like we have a little bit of time left in the presentation. So if anyone has any questions, I invite you to type them into your question box, and Karen can answer them. We'll start with this one. How can you differentiate the question and answers from the closing part of your presentation?
Well, you're always going to want to finish out the question and answer period, okay? So you might summarize your presentation and say, now I'd like to ask, are there any questions? And you'll take all the questions, you'll answer the questions, and then you'll say something to the effect of, oh, my time is up, or one last question, and then you answer it, and you say, now, I really enjoyed being here. Before you all leave, I just want to tell you one more thing, and then you close it out. So you want to be very clear about where you are and what folks are hearing.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
And that's what kind of exercises do you recommend to improve the tone of your voice? I don't speak very loudly, and it's hard for me to be loud.
Oh, sure, sure. You know, I am a huge lover of voice lessons. If you've never taken singing lessons, it's an incredible way to learn about your range and to gain everything from breathing to the ability to speak, to handle volume of your voice. Even if you don't think you can sing, who cares? It's a great thing for your speaking voice. The other one is some of those goofy actors exercises. You may want to do those alone or in the car. But you practice saying the same sentence in many different ways and many different volumes. And I always like to tell people, if there's an improv troupe or a place, a studio that offers improv classes in your town, please, please go take an improv class just for fun, because you'll learn a lot about yourself and have a great time.
Great, great advice. Here's another. What tips can you give for women presenting to a room full of men?
Ah, yes, okay. I think number one, be yourself. Don't be afraid to be feminine, but be strong. Don't say, I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Don't use tag phrases. Tag phrases are things that women do a lot, like, I think it's a good idea, or they might end their sentences with right or okay. It's a way that we sort of verify that everyone's with us, but it actually weakens us. So presenting to a room full of men, there's nothing better that you can do than just be an effective, warm, smart presenter. Go in, tell them what you need to tell them, smile, answer their questions, be who you are. You know, if you're authoritative, be authoritative. If you're smile a lot, smile a lot. But whatever you do, be the expert in the room. They wouldn't want you presenting if you weren't.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Another, does your preparation change at all if you're presenting to, let's say, a group of 100 instead of a group of 10?
Yeah, it can, because, for example, the things I might choose to do might be different. I always like to have audience engagement, of course, always. It's the hallmark of what we do at ImprovEdge, all of our facilitators. So, for example, in a room of 100, you know, I can do things where people raise their hands. Sometimes I can have them stand up or sit down, but I can't really have them moving around, okay? But I still like to engage them if I can. In a group of 10, you know, I can, and by the way, I still like to do things like get down off the stage and walk up and talk to people, or ask them a question, have them answer in my mic, which you would do with a group of 10 as well. In a group of 10, you also are not bound by things like microphones. You don't have to worry about that. You might just totally skip the PowerPoint in a group of 10 and make it a little more informal. You can pass out things to a group of 10 and have them experience that. So again, it does take a little bit of change, but it's also about sort of the impact you want to make.
Great. All right, well, we have a few more minutes, so if anyone has any more questions, feel free to send them in. And I'll say in the meantime, we do have our CEO, Gail Romero, is with us today, and she sent thank you organization and helping and build our lead. Thank you very much, Karen.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Gail.
All right, and it looks like that's the end of the questions for today.
So all right, well, listen. Oh, go ahead, Hannah.
Oh, sorry, I'll hand it back to you in just a moment.
You bet.
I just wanted to thank everybody for participating and joining us today, and thank you especially, Karen, for this wonderful presentation and all the great tips. Everyone, this webinar will be recorded and will be on the MBA Women International website, which is www.mbawomen.org. All right.
All right.
You had a
I've got to close, don't I? I've got to do my bookend. So I just want to remind you of one of my favorite quotes that we saw. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but a habit." So get out there and do it. Thank you so much.
great. Great. Thank you. And everyone have a wonderful evening.
Good night.